On today's episode of Watch JR Go, the internet, you guys, killed Leroy's cousin from Alabama, Off-Road Leroy. What is going on, guys? I am Watch JR Go, and like I said, I am here with my, I honestly forgot what year, 2000 maybe, Corvette? 97, 9 of 97, so this is probably a 98 C5 Corvette that I bought from Scrap Life Garage. Now, I love those guys. I had a great time when I went up there to pick this up. We took it off-roading, ripped it around for hours. You guys saw that video. I don't know if you ever got to see the pictures, but I mean, I got literal airtime in a Corvette, which is pretty sweet. This thing was a blast. It's got an LS1 under the hood. It's on 33s on these rally wheels. This car is a monster. It was so fun to drive, and these big wheels moving around in the front end makes it like really bouncy, but also stays under control, which is a fun combo when you're trying to rip it off-road. So, Scrap Life Garage bought this from Copart, wrecked, of course. It's been hit in the rear, and you can clearly tell that it's been hit in the rear. Bumper's all folded up. That could have been a tree, but not only is the bumper all folded up, the rails are folded up too. So, obviously, they bought this to part it out. Lee C Parts, big salvage yard up north in Washington. They had a lot of fun with this car. And then they sold it on Mods and Miles. So I bought it on Mods and Miles because I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I've had some C4 carts before. Years and years and years ago, I built a C4 cart, and it was unbelievably fun. Once you get all the weight off the rear end of them, it's crazy what they do. They're not fast anymore because there's no traction. Once you pull all the weight off, you can't really adjust the suspension on these because the suspension is that composite, basically a giant plastic bar is what they ride on. When you pull all the weight off the rear end, all of a sudden the rear wheels camber in, and you can adjust it, but I didn't want to spend all the money on adjusting it. This one hasn't been done either. They just put a bunch of weight back with these wheels. But it made it so light in the rear end that I could drift every corner, and it was a blast. You'd need like 20 horsepower to drift a corner once you're only on the edge of the tire, which is really, really fun because C4s, obviously, worthless. Mine was a Crossfire car. It only had like 100 horsepower to begin with, and then it was old, so it probably had 20. But after we got the weight off the rear, it was a blast. This one is also an absolute blast, but I've never seen more hate in my life in the comments. There were a ton of, I'm unsubscribing if you make any more videos working on this car, which is insane, but I brought it home on the tow truck that's at Weston's now, the rollback. Obviously, I was able to drive it, and I did plan on flying to Washington and driving this home, but it doesn't have window controls and the climate control's not in it. And without those two parts, it might have been a very miserable drive home. I bought it in like December of 22. I ended up bringing it home in, I think, February or something like that. And no matter when I brought it home in that period, it would have been cold. Not only would it have been cold without a roof because the target top didn't come with it, it would have been sunburny and cold, which is a crazy combo. I probably would have been windburnt, sunburnt, and frostbitten all at the same time. It's 30 hours, basically 30 hours to get home. But it does run, and when I bought it, it did drive. Power seats, look at it memory recalling right now. And of course, radio works. It's such a great car. It's also straight pipe. They ripped the whole exhaust off of this car so they could sell all of those parts. A lot of the valuable parts off this car have been sold way before I owned it. So that's why it sounds like a tractor and doesn't have climate control or window switches and all that fun stuff. Those are expensive parts on C5s, and I understand. But when I bought it from Lee, we talked about it, and I was like, if I need to, I can part it out, sell the engine, and I'll be good again. And unfortunately, because of the comments and the fact that this can't be parked outside, I mean, what are you gonna do? It's gonna, no matter what, unless you build a barn for it and put it back inside, like you'd have to build a structure around it. It will fill up with water and be terrible. So it's always been stored inside. Changing gears for 2 seconds, we are back on the Osmo Pocket 3 today. I'm pretty much over this camera. I see all the comments about how if the guest doesn't have a microphone, you can't hear them. Well, The Pocket only comes with one microphone. Currently, DJI doesn't sell a kit with 2 microphones. So I had bought a mic 1, and then we found out literally, 4 days ago when we got this camera or something, the mic 1 does not sync with the Pocket 3. So if you're trying to figure that out, 100% it does not work. You have to have mic 2s, and you have to buy those separately, and they don't get the charging base. So we're waiting till the mic 2 comes out to ever fix that problem. And for the most part, if I don't use it like this with no external microphone, we're just gonna give up on this camera. I'd be happy to stop using it. Also, a lot of you guys were like, I wish the wide angle wasn't there. Check this out, it's magnetic. No more wide angle. I don't think it makes a difference though, let's see. See, I look exactly the same. It's just a hair wider. It really doesn't make that much of a difference. So for the comments, I was going to pull the wide angle off, but yeah, it adds like 3 foot in front of the car, that's it. So I got this car home and I put it over at my dad's shop and I told those guys, do whatever you want with this thing, it's a tank, just have fun with it and I'll come pick it back up when I can. It needed to be inside, right? It was about to storm, I had to get it inside, so I dropped it off over there and my brother and Joey had this thing and apparently they went out and had an absolute ball. And then it quit moving. So I was like, oh, well, it's just a clutch. It seemed like a clutch. And we'll swap the clutch out and we'll get it back on the road and we'll keep doing off-road Leroy things. Well, I no longer think it's the clutch. If I put it in gear, I just realized I can put it in gear and push it, which means it's probably the diff. So it's either the diff or the clutch. The diff is the normal failure on these things. And Weston Champlin also needed a diff, so I promised him I'd pull this car apart and get him a diff. And now I'm pretty sure we both have broken diffs, which is very unfortunate. It's not leaking or anything, but the gears inside of it must have exploded. Either that or the torque tube broke. There's a chance the torque tube broke in the middle, the actual drive shaft, or the clutch is bad. So it's one of those 3 things, but we're gonna find out as we tear this thing apart. Unfortunately, it's not worth fixing it and trying to put it back on the road. When I bought this car, I had already sold it again to a friend of mine. And I was like, I'm gonna keep it for a little bit, and then as soon as I'm done with it, come get it. And he was like, deal, I'll pay you the day you wanna get rid of it. And then he starts asking about the title and really bothering me about it. And he's like, so what's the deal with the title? I was like, it's a salvage title. And he was like, well, what's that mean? I was like, well, without rebuilding the car, that's what Kansas requires. Kansas requires you bring receipts for the parts you bought to rebuild the car. Well, we don't wanna rebuild the car. It's got working lights, it's got an engine, it has a drive, it has everything that we need. It doesn't have bumpers technically, but the crash bars will probably pass as bumpers. But Kansas will not let me retitle this because it wasn't rebuilt. It was just, set up like a dune buggy. If I found the right guy, there's a chance I could get somebody to look the other way and maybe sign off on this being a car again. But for the most part, they're probably gonna say this cannot be put back on the road, which is unfortunate. It has everything it needs. Oh, fenders. Fenders are required to be legal in Kansas. We went through all this when I was building my vet cart and we were using trailer fenders and stuff like that, but it's probably never going to be on road again. So everybody that was gonna buy it was really freaked out about not being able to ever title it in their name. What we're gonna do is shred this thing for parts, exactly like we talked about at the very beginning. I think I've got a friend that needs the engine. He said he'd pick that up from me. So I don't know if he's going to. Feel free to email me if you need an LS1. It will be, $2,000. That's what LS1s go for. But we're gonna get the money back out of the car. I figure if I sell the wheels and tires and the engine and maybe the transmission, it's probably good. Then we're home free. So let's start tearing apart the Corvette the internet sentence to death. If there was one thing that I wish I could do with this car, it would be make like a 70, 80 mile an hour run in the dirt, because I think it would be incredible at that. But I've never had enough distance to really get some top speed going. I don't think I've been more than 30 or 40 in the dirt with this thing, but it would absolutely fly if you could get a big straightaway. The brakes are incredible. It still has plenty of traction and stopping power because those tires weigh a ton. These are literally truck tires. They're brand new. Lee bought them just for this car. You can see all the white marks inside the tires still. The white paint's still there. But yeah, they're light truck. LT 285 70 17s. The wheels are new. The tires are new. The lights are new. He bought all of this just to build this work of art. Unfortunately today, we have to say goodbye. And there's a bunch of people that are going to be happy that this isn't sitting in their garages anymore, because it sure wasn't sitting in mine. getting very hot in here. Now we are ripping through this thing, of course. I'm getting pretty good at this after the last time I did one. The goal here is to separate both front and rear subframes with everything connected. That way we're doing this the easy way. So we're gonna have to get all the suspension unbolted, but I already have the exhaust off all the way down the middle, which is obviously a bit of a chore. You can see that right now. And I'm almost done pulling these bolts. I got half of them off. And back here, everything's disconnected, all the wiring harness, everything that needs to come off, as far as I remember. Drain the radiator and disconnect the ECU. Those are the two things that really get the engine out of this thing. And then the steering shaft, pop that bolt loose. And that should be it. It's actually really nice working on these things when they don't have a body, and you can get to every single bolt. It's 8:25, and we started on this at 6. And as you can see, Eric and I have her stripped. This is about as stripped as they come. So there's 8 bolts left. 8 bolts left holding the drivetrain to the chassis. And right now we're gonna try to go ahead and separate that and let it rip. So Eric made these dollies last night out of butcher block, and we threw my jack stands on it. The car is already sitting on it. So basically all you gotta do is yank those bolts out.
Is it the ones under the spring here?
No, it's this one.
Oh, they're there.
That, yeah. The ones that are holding the subframe to the chassis. Oh, I didn't know those spun up top. Let me get a wrench on there, because on mine I don't think I had to get top and bottom at once. I figured it was time for us to leave the time lapse in the past and have Eric push the button, since we know we're finally here. Really the only thing we cut out of the whole car is the clutch line, because I was like, I'm not gonna fight the clutch line. I pulled the pin and it wouldn't release. I was like, bolt cut it, just doesn't matter, throw it away. And I guess do the honors. I think we're all the way home. Oh, stop. We need to separate that little guy right there, and that's it. Do you have a straight bit? Oh, here. We're not even gonna go look for tools. I'm just gonna pop it with my knife. And that should finish this up. Okay, now it's free. Go ahead. Whew! Man, I know my game plan was to have every part of this car separated tonight, but I'm kind of tired. Oh, you found the top. All right, we are dripping some brake fluid here.
Funny.
What can we do about this? I know what we can do about this. It's already ruined.
It's ruined.
Well, we got to get the gas tanks out. Got to save that battery box. I got the battery cable unhooked now so we can pull it back. It's always it seems so easy to pull these things apart, but it's a day job with a body on it, that's for sure. Unfortunately, this was another car where the ECU, I couldn't just remove it. If you can remove the ECU, it's actually a pretty quick job. You pull the fuse box, you pull the ECU, and then you lay everything over on the engine, and then you do this. A lot of you guys are like, well, you did it wrong already. I can hear the comments. Why'd you unhook the engine? And that is because when Scrap Life built this thing, they took the fenders and all the ECU supports, right? Threw all that away. And the ECU is jammed under the dash and will not move. So until I got the harness out so I could feed it back, I wasn't going to be able to get I don't even know how they did it. I literally do not understand how they got the ECU where it's at. So I did what I could with what I had, as always. And oh, look at that brake line. We stretched that one out. At least the hard lines are gonna go in the trash. Luckily, all the brake lines in this car were ruined. They pulled the ABS module and then teed everything, because obviously the ABS module is worth basically what the car is worth. So we're home free. That's all I know.
Get over in the driver's seat and start shifting.
I'll go drive it.
Right there.
Yeah, you got to reach down through the hole so you can shift.
Yeah.
You need a 6-foot arm.
You gotta put shit.
All right, guys, we made a big mess here. We got a lot of parts in the shop. We have to clean some parts, clean the shop. Since the entire drivetrain's on dollies, we should be able to just slide it backwards, and then we'll bring a trailer in here, set the Corvette on a trailer, the body, throw it in the trash. Obviously, the seats, I'll sell the seats. If anybody needs some seats, $700 for the pair. It's what I paid for my last pair of brown sports seats. They are expensive and hard to find, and no rips in those seats. So if you guys need some parts, shoot me an email, because I've got a C5's worth. That is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop.watchjargo.com for cool shirts, not like this. And please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and I will talk to you next time. This is the same camera, unfortunately. I no longer like this camera. Yeah, I've used this for like the 5 videos or something. So the shifter's not broke or anything. You can hear the trans running. So I'm gonna put this thing in first. Okay, now can you turn yours forward? Turn your hub forward. Aye. Nope. Why wouldn't it work before? Maybe the clutch was actually jammed on. Do you think that's what was going on? Like since we cut the clutch line, it just released. Maybe the clutch line got bent when we jumped it. And eventually it just had so much pressure that it held the clutch open. I don't know. All I know is we're done with it. I bet the clutch died. I bet that's what happened to this car. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. I did see that one comment where somebody said, why don't you talk about that diamond box on the top of the toolbox? All right, we'll talk about it. For one commenter, this is the wrap up for the video. This is a very old diamond box. I think it's called the MC3 or something like that. But Brian bought this for us to keep in the trailer and take to like 2K and stuff like that 6 years ago, something like that. It has a monstrous battery in it, 231 watt hours, and it's supposed to run for like 13 hours. It did us well back in those days, and then it was just sitting in his shop doing nothing. So I bought it from him for $100. It's crazy. These things used to be like $700 for a Bluetooth speaker. But Tony D'Amore builds these things. He's the old engineer at Rockford Fosgate, from Rockford Fosgate. He's not there anymore. But he builds all the insane car audio stuff. If you're into like Steve Mead's builds, you've seen his gear, like the amplifier dyno, that's Tony D'Amore. He builds a bunch of crazy like sound quality amps that are like class AB and really, really tiny. Just stuff like that. This thing has like 3-inch speakers and tweeters, and it absolutely fills this shop with sound. It gets crazy loud. Actually, if I'm standing like right here, I can feel the port blowing through the back of my hair, like lifting my hair. You wouldn't believe how hard that thing hits. And you can just unplug it and carry it off whenever you want. It might be one of the wildest Bluetooth speakers other than the 1,000-watt JBL that sits up by your shoulder.